Hey guys, what's up? This is Ken Susi here at Fishman Live, and we have a very special announcement. Not only are we broadcasting these awesome interviews on Fishman Live, you can find them on Facebook, Twitch, and YouTube. You can also now go to our podcast page, which is you can look it up on iTunes or Spotify, and it's called Everything You Hear Is True. And Fishman is sponsoring that. You can go back and listen to past interviews. The second that they go up, this interview, is over. We're going to be putting up this interview, so we're going to stay really on top of that. So right now, we have a very special guest, but before I announce who it is, I just wanted to say our guest, you can ask him any questions you want. As I conduct this interview, I will be seeing the chat. So if you have any questions for our guest, they will unfortunately not see it, but I will be seeing it and reading them off. But guys, I'd love to introduce Mr. Michael Sweet. How you doing, brother?
I am good, man. I'll be honest with you. I had you on the calendar, but I wasn't completely prepared. I was just listening to remotely live mixes of the new Stryper Acoustic album.
Oh, nice.
So, and then I was listening, and then you called, and so that's why it was a little delay in me getting in contact with you.
You know what? You're, as far as I'm concerned, you're one of my favorite. You were in one of my favorite bands of all times. You don't have to apologize to me. Just say that. Listen, I was listening to the new Stryper mixes, and that is way more important, and I will accept that.
Well, hey, man, I'm one of those guys. I try to be punctual, Pete, and be on the money, and I apologize for that. And then I had to get my tripod set up, so I'm not holding my phone, and I've got a little light, and it's a little more professional. So here we are.
Well, now we are both living the dream. I'm so excited to have you on this Fishman Live and the Everything You Hear Is True podcast. Really, we started this thing just because we wanted to catch up with our artists. I mean, obviously, you've been a Fishman artist for a very long time. You're actually pretty local as well, too. I believe you live in the Massachusetts area. This is obviously a very difficult time for everybody, and we really just wanted to connect with the guys and girls who are playing our products. And
yeah.
At this point, what have you been doing to pass the time? Obviously everyone's still social distancing, but what are you doing to stay busy?
Well, fortunately, I was in a situation where when we started on the new Stryper album, which is not the one I was just referring to. That's an acoustic album, but this is the full-fledged, all-original studio electric album. We started on that. The guys came out to my house in January, and we started pre-production. Then we went in and started recording. I believe it was on the 15th of January. So that's right when you started hearing about, coronavirus and what was happening in China and overseas and whatnot. And, we were paying close attention to the news every day. And as we made the album, we tracked the basics up until early February, went and did some touring. I came back, started my vocals in early March. And that's really when it was full fledged. Everybody was, obviously seeing every day on the news, every news channel, what was going on around us and in our world. So it was an interesting thing to record an album during those times.
Yeah.
I'm not going to lie. It was just different. It's not that it was better or worse. It was just different. Because here I am going down trying to sing vocals with conviction and a smile, and like the world is crumbling around us, or at least so it seemed according to Fox and CNN and all these news channels. So it was very interesting to say the least. But also at the same time, I think making an album during that time made for a little bit of a cooler album in many ways. Definitely, yeah. There's a lot more passion in the lyrics, and the lyrics pertain to, oddly enough, even though it was written pre-coronavirus, pre-COVID-19, they pertain so perfectly to what's going on right now.
Yeah, I was gonna say, isolation sometimes for artists is a good thing, right? You there's nothing to sidetrack you for being in the studio and not focusing, from focusing on, what you have at hand. Because some bands, they'll go to LA and do a record just so they can enjoy the nightlife and be busy. And then there's some people that just hide in the woods. So maybe this isn't that bad for musicians that are currently making a record, but it is unfortunate for the rest of us that are stuck home.
Yeah, I think the thing with me, and not just me, but everybody, but musicians in particular, because it seems to be a little more frightening for the music world, because obviously, we don't rely any longer upon record sales.
Yeah.
Those days are gone. So what we've been relying upon is live performances for the most part, and now those are shut down. And when they do come back, we don't know to what capacity. You hear stories about, drive-in theaters, and a lot of these venues closing their doors, or if they stay open, it's going to be half capacity or whatnot. And then that's going to obviously change the guarantees and the finances, and that's going to change everything.
It really is. And this is scary too. I mean, when you really think about it, people have to be extra careful when we all go back to going to shows. You never know how this thing is, no one really knows exactly what this is.
Nope.
So it's unfortunate, but we're glad obviously us here at Fishman are glad that you got your record going. You're listening to mixes. It seems like there's still forward movement. So we're excited to hear that. That's really cool. So we have Jimmy Alexander Ramos Rivera. A lot of names there. He's asking that. Well, he's asking you a question, but I'm gonna start off by saying I've been a huge fan for a very long time. I'm gonna paint you a picture. Me being like, I don't know, I was 11, 12 years old in my sister's Camaro, 1988 when In God We Trust came out, and that record changed my life. I know I'm a little late to the game, and I'm sorry to date you. But like your records had so much influence. I play in a heavy metal band called Unearth. We've toured a lot. Metal Blade Records. We did a bunch of Ozfests and stuff like that. But like there are nights where we will be partying on the bus, and you gotta put in Stryper. Believe it or not, my guys, like being metalheads, they didn't realize how sick the guitar tone was on that specific track, or all your albums. So when I started hearing that you were playing Fluence, which I'm the product manager of the Fishman Fluence line, I was so excited. So what brought you to using, Fishman Fluence? What was your journey in finding it?
Well, I'll tell you, man, in terms of, I've always used Fishman products, but more on the acoustic side. And in terms of electric pickups, I've always used Seymour Duncan. And it's just kind of how it's been. And now I wound up producing a song for a girl, and a couple guys came in who had Fluence pickups in their guitars, Fluence modern pickups. And we're tracking them, and I'm thinking, wow, these sound really, really good. And that's the way my brain starts to work, is as we're getting into it, I start talking more and more about it, and then I'm obsessed by it. And that's all I could think about that day was, wow, those pickups. So I reached out to Chris, wound up ordering a pair, dropping them in one of my guitars. And then we took all our guitars into the studio not long after that, and we made a Stryper album. And that guitar was the winner in terms of tone.
Yep.
It was always the one that just had something more to it. It just sounded more open. It wasn't as compressed sounding as some of the other active pickups, had more dynamics. And we wound up always using that guitar. And that was a Paul Reed Smith guitar.
Yep.
Custom 24, loaded with the Fluence Moderns. Okay. And they're still in that guitar. And then eventually, fast forward to, a few months ago, I had Chris send me the Devin Townsends, put those in a guitar, and that became the clear winner in all the guitars that were in the studio. It just there's a little bit more of a mid, at least to my ears, a little bit more of a mid bump that I like. And it really made the guitars cut through in the mix even more so. So really cool, man. Great pickups.
That's awesome. We made I got to send you something. We made some Stephen Carpenter from the Deftones. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that band, but we made him a signature series pickup, and it's available in 7 and 8 string, but we made a 6 string of it. And believe it or not, the whole time that we were voicing that pickup, your name kept coming up in the voicing session.
Wow.
We, myself and the team were saying, it's got to be like that Stryper tone. Like it's got to have that mid bump in that right place that almost sounds like, it sounds processed, but it still sounds organic. Like
Right,
that,
exactly.
I gotta if I could find a set of those. I know they're out of date. They're only a limited edition. I gotta send you some just to try and see what you think.
Oh, wow. And those are also active Fluence pickups?
Yeah. So again, the way Fluence works, and I spent a lot of time talking about this. They're powered pickups, right? They need
Yeah,
power in order to function. But the
right.
pickups that you're currently playing, especially the Devin Townsend, but voice one is an active sound. Voice two is actually a passive sound. In Devin's case, it's very much like a Telecaster. In
Yeah,
the voice two of your moderns, it's very much similar to like a hot rodded kind of overwound passive sound, right?
gotcha.
Um,
Yeah,
so the cool thing about Fluence is because we use that printed 48 layer coil, it's like even on our passive pickups, like even though they require power, they both have the most passive sounding passive pickups ever. They just need power to function. So it's like you're playing with this like whole new technology that people still get trying to put their heads around it now. But I'm so glad you're liking it. The
oh my God, I love it. I love it because I mean the thing. To be honest, the reason why I started playing active pickups in the first place, powered pickups, however you want to call it, is I liked how live I encountered less RF noise and ground hum when we were touring. And Oz always had the passive pickups. I love passive pickups too. I use them in the studio. But I found live it was better for my needs, the active pickups. And of course, back in the day, those were the EMG pickups. But I didn't like necessarily the tone of them. I always had to kind of reconfigure my amps
Yeah.
to fit the pickup,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
And but I liked how there was no noise. I didn't get the under the lights and all that.
Yeah.
And then when I went to the Seymour Duncan blackouts, it was even better, and they sounded a little bit more organic, a little bit more on the passive side in terms of tone. And then when I heard the Fishmans, mind blown, because it was just like the best of both worlds, in terms of that organic, passive, really thick, like dynamic sound, not all compressed and digitized or whatever. And then you get the noiseless applications. It's so nice to not have that noise.
Yeah, it's actually pretty amazing. Even if you were to try our single width or Strat like pickups, what you'd
Right.
find is that there's always inherent like 60 cycle hum that you hear when you're using a regular passive pickup, and even if you roll back your tone, you'll hear that hum louder than your guitar at one point.
Right.
Fluence has that. It has the ability to like it has no 60 cycle hum. It's completely noiseless, and if you roll back, it's like a dimmer switch. You're hearing the tone. It's like the bass and treble is still there.
Right.
We got to send you a set to try, definitely for the studio at some point.
It's amazing, man. Yeah, I'm very pleased. I love them. They're great pickups. I've got them in 5 guitars now.
Yep.
And also, the Michael Sweet US model Washburns come loaded with the Fluence Moderns.
Yep.
And then I just signed a deal with the new company called Sully Guitars.
Yes, they're good. Greg Morrow plays them. He's a fantastic
Yeah,
guitar player. Yeah.
I mean, I first fell in love with John Sullivan Sully, and it's just a great person. But man, he sent me 2 guitars. I was blown away, and we're gonna load those guitars with the Fishmans as well.
Nice. Anything you ever need, either contact myself or Chris, and we'll get it right for you. That's
so awesome,
that's
man.
great.
Well, I appreciate it, dude. I really do, and I love the pickups. Great job on the pickups. Amazing.
Thanks. And what else are you? What you said you were using? Again, you're a long time Fishman user in general. What were you using for the acoustic stuff?
Well, I've had a number of different preamps in my acoustic guitars, and I can't name them by model. But like, for example, on my Michael Sweet, one of my high-end Washburns, it's got the really high-end Fishman system. And then I've got a Washburn guitar that's got just the simple Fishman system in it with just a volume and a tone knob. That's it. But I love how that system sounds. It sounds fantastic. And Chris has been really kind, man. He's really taken care of me. He sent me some different pedals and whatnot. And I've got the Aura pedal, and I also have the is it the Tone Deck pedal, I believe.
Tone Deck's fantastic.
I have that as well, and I love that because it's got the built-in effects. And you know, man, just you can't go wrong with anything Fishman. I mean, it's all great stuff. You're not going to find, and that's not because we're doing this interview and people are watching and listening, but you're not going to find a bad product that they make. I don't think.
Well, when we do, I'll let you know.
Let me know, and I'm guessing if you do, it's not going to get released because I know you got the quality control as well.
Yeah,
So
yeah. Larry Fishman definitely is a visionary, and he doesn't ever let anything out of the building that is not up to Fishman standards,
yeah,
quality
yeah.
standards. But I got to tell you, you and I actually run in the same circles here and there. So I used to record a lot with my band in Blue Jay Studios, and I believe you used to use that back in the day, right?
We did. I tracked twice there,
Yep.
and that's a place that I went to back in the day. Now, lately, and it was a great studio. I don't even know if they're around any
They
longer.
had to close their doors, unfortunately.
Yeah, but man, what a great place! And then we wound up going to Longview,
Yep.
and we tracked an album there. We fell in love with the engineer Danny Bernini, and he worked at another place as well called Spirit House.
Yep.
So once we went to Spirit House with Danny, it was love at first sight, marriage. You know, we're still married to Spirit House and Danny. I think I've made like 13 albums there. It's crazy.
Oh my God. Yeah. So yeah, no, it seems like every single time I went in to record at Blue Jay, someone was like, "Oh, Michael Sweet's working here," or "Oh, Michael Sweet's like been here all week." So I figure you were there all the time. I mean,
Yeah.
yeah. What about that room that like made you interested in recording there?
The thing I loved about Blue Jay was obviously the gear that they had and the vibe that they had. It was a really cool, when you walk in a studio, it's very important how it feels, right?
Yeah, yeah,
If it doesn't feel right, it could be the best sounding studio in the world, but it's still going to throw you off. I loved how it felt.
yeah.
And then I listened to some tracks they did, and then we set up drums and track drums in their drum room, and I love the drum tones that we got out of that room.
Yeah, and the engineers there are really nice guys as well at the time.
Absolutely. I think the guy that was engineering us at the time was Will.
Will, yeah, Will. I can't remember his last name, but he moved to L.A. Great guy.
Great guy, great engineer.
Yep.
I went in there and I tracked a solo album there, and then it became a Stryper album, and we retracked it there. So that was my time at Blue Jay, and I loved it, man. It was awesome.
His name is Will. Hold on, I'm looking through my Rolodex right now. I don't have it.
And now I feel really bad because he's probably watching,
and he's the best dude ever.
I'm real putz.
Well, we're both guilty. So the other circle that you and I both share is that. So I grew up in a town called Danvers, Massachusetts, right, on the North Shore, and my last name is Susie. So the way that the seats were aligned in school is like A, all the way to the left is A, all the way through S, right, or Z.
Yeah.
So I'd always be on the right hand side of the room. But back in the old days, it was right to left, right? So
say what your name was again.
Susie.
Spell it.
Susi.
Okay. Susi. Susie.
Yeah,
okay,
a lot of you might see a lot of my family does construction in Boston. They own M. Susi. You'll see the big trucks laying concrete.
Okay.
They worked on Boylston Street. All those guys. They're all great. But so my teachers who knew that I played like hockey and soccer, and I was like one of those guys. But I would always sit at a certain spot of the room, and every single like teacher that knew that I also played music besides sports was always like, Brad Delp used to sit in that seat right where you're sitting. It was like this big, like it was always a big deal, right? And obviously I was a huge fan of Boston. Now you actually sang for the band for a short period of time, correct?
Yeah.
Or filled in.
I still scratch my head on that one and think, how did this happen? It's so interesting. Basically, my wife at the time was very sick, and I had read about Brad's passing.
Yep.
And I wrote something about what he meant to me as a singer.
Yep.
And then going through what I was going through with my wife at the time, my emotions were running high, and I had a lot to share. And I shared this real from the heart letter about Brad, and I guess Kim Scholes read it.
Yep.
She reached out to my management, and they invited me to come and sing at what was supposed to be the last Boston show ever.
Yep.
At the Bank of America, right on the harbor there. And the rest is history. I basically, they wanted me to sing a song called Higher Power.
Yep.
And I did not say anything on the phone call. I just said, no problem.
Yeah.
But I was thinking internally, like, dang, Higher Power. I wish I could sing, More Than a Feeling or something like that.
Right?
Yeah.
You want to sing the banger, but then again, like those vocals, I mean, Brad Delp, I mean, and yourself, I would say the two of you guys in that time period, I mean, your voices, I mean, you sang so high, you guys sang with so much command. It's just, it makes so much sense to have you play for Boston, even under the circumstances after the fact. I mean, did you feel like it was a natural role to like slip into?
It did feel natural. At the very beginning, it felt like, what is going on? How is this happening? Why is this happening? This is so surreal.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And especially at the time, and under the circumstances, my wife being very sick and then losing Brad and walking into the studio for the first time where they rehearse and just feeling that spirit of, oppression, and everybody was incredibly bummed out, obviously.
Yeah.
But I felt as I went along, I started feeling like I was put there for a reason, and they were put there for a reason, for our worlds to merge, to kind of help each other through those difficult times. That's what I really believe to this day. Now, I walked in there with a guitar as well and learned all the parts. They didn't expect me to do that, and I think that was the icing on the cake for me.
Yeah, because you're an awesome guitar player, and they're like, wait a second, this guy also plays guitar. That's unbelievable.
Yeah, I went in there and we started with guitars. I plugged into Brad's rig, which was very odd, and we started playing. I think the first song we played was Rock and Roll Band.
So good.
And I'll never forget it. It's Gary Peel, Tom Scholes, and me. Yep. That's it. And then Kim Scholes and a few other people sitting around. And we played Rock and Roll Band. And I'm not going to lie, and I say this humbly, I knew the song better than they knew it. I mean, because I rehearsed my butt off for weeks, and I learned every little note. And I think it blew Tom away, because mid-song he stopped and said to Gary, his eyes were huge, and he said, "Oh my gosh, the guitars have never sounded this good." I mean, quote.
Well, Tom is one of those guys too. I mean, he wrote the whole first record by himself. I mean, in his house.
Yeah.
So when he says that, that's a huge deal.
It was a big deal. And not long after that, not that day, but a few days later, I had to go back and they literally were playing guitar again, going over songs. I didn't know I was going to sing. And they're like, okay, let's hear you sing More Than a Feeling. And that's when, I think I had to go to the bathroom for a moment, because I might have peed a little bit in my pants,
Yeah, but it's insane. It's insane.
Yeah, just, mind blowing,
Well, I'm glad. I mean, I never got to see that. I'm going to have to now YouTube it. There's got to be something on YouTube about it, right?
There's videos on YouTube, and another guy came in who worked at Home Depot and did some demos, karaoke style demos of Boston songs, and he sounded a lot like Brad, a guy named Tommy DiCarlo.
Yep.
And it wound up working out where he sang pretty much half of the set and I sang half of the set.
Yep. That's amazing. Well, at one point, are you up there at Boston and you're like, this is going well, but oh yeah, I'm in an amazing band as well. Like I gotta go back to playing with Stryper as well. Like how do you make that decision? Because Boston's iconic, Stryper's iconic, right? But Boston actually probably had like a slight surge when you were singing with them because of Rock Band and all those other things, right?
Yes, they did. And oddly enough, because of Brad's passing, I think it brought a lot of people out, more so to celebrate his life, so the numbers were record-breaking numbers.
Yeah.
On that tour.
Yeah. It's got to be.
So it was really an incredible time, and I got to be a part of that, and it's just phenomenal. And, as we went along, once we got through that, excuse me, you're going to hear a phone ring for a minute. Once we got through that 08 tour,
yep.
I did start thinking more about how am I going to do this?
Yep.
How am I going to do Boston and Stryper? And eventually I wound up leaving Boston and, just to focus 100% on Stryper, because Stryper's my baby,
Totally. So before I move over to Stryper, that's a good segue, but I'm going to answer one of these. I want you to answer one of these questions. Metal Madness 66 just asked, are you using amps or modelers live for guitar amps?
I'll tell you what I've been doing lately. I signed on with a company called ISP. Buck Waller, who started Rocktron.
Yep.
And he wound up leaving Rocktron and going and starting his own company, ISP. And they released the Michael Sweet Signature pedal.
Nice.
And it's an all-in-one digital pedal, but at the same time, it's not a modeler.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
And the way they built this thing with the chips that they used and everything that's inside the internals, I have never heard a digital box that sounds so analog. Yep. It's got a warmth to it and an oomph to it that only this box can give you. And I basically go direct out to the system for the front of house sound, and then I feed my amps different outputs with different EQs. So I have those for monitoring, and I have just the front of house getting the direct feed off of the box.
I'll have you know that both myself and the guitar player of Andrew WK, Dave Pino, he is obsessed with Rocktron. So he's going back and buying all those old school Rocktron modules, the small racks and stuff like that. So
yeah. Well, they made some great stuff. Judas Priest was using one of theirs single space rack mount module called a Piranha.
Yep.
And I tell you what, that thing, if you can find one, amazing sounding.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
Really good stuff. But you know, the old thing I used to do, the way I got my tone was back in the late 70s. Early 80s. I'm one of those guys that obsesses over stuff.
Yep.
Like I told you about the pickup in the studio. Once my mind's on that, I'll think about it for a month. And I was obsessing over tone back in those days, and I wound up stumbling upon a Lab Series head.
Yep.
And I brought it home, and I wound up preamping, going out of the preamp out into a Marshall.
Yep.
And that was the tone right there. That's when the Stryper tone was birthed. We were playing with Rat at Gazzari's, and I used to hide the Lab Series behind my Marshalls. And Robin Crosby would come up to me every night and say, "Dude, what are you using to get your tone?"
And you're like, "I'm hiding it."
I'd say it's a modded Marshall, and he'd just kind of smirk at me, you know?
Yeah.
And that morphed from that into a Furman PQ3.
Okay. So is that what did you use on the track that I called out at the beginning of this live feed? In God We Trust. What was it? The first rig you were telling me about?
No. The first rig wound up making its way onto the first album, but by In God We Trust, we were using Furman PQ3s, and we would preamp with those into Mesa Boogie Mark II C heads.
Okay, so I get it. I have that. That's a Dimebag Darrell trick as well, and I have.
Well, yeah, Dimebag it's interesting because Dimebag actually got his idea to use the Furman from Stryper, and he didn't talk about it much in interviews, but I have heard that from friends of his that we kind of turned him on to that, and then he took it to a different place, you know, and had a little different sound. But it gave us that, you know, it was basically boosting 750 to 1K. A narrow bandwidth at 18 plus dB.
That's a man who knows his settings. I love it. You're just like you're just like me. You know exactly where to put them. I love it.
Yep.
Dimebag was the same way. So like when we toured with him, and just the tour before he passed away, I went through Dallas, and he's like, "I got a surprise for you. Could stop by in the warehouse," and he handed me one of those Randall RH 100 amps or whatever, RG 100, I think they're called.
I think it's an RG, yeah.
Yeah, and then he's like, "I don't have one, but you need the PQ3. Like, go get one and you'll be fine." It took me a while to actually find one.
Oh yeah, man. I'm telling you, if you can, they are hard to find. They made for a brief period a reissue, and I have that as well, but it's not the same.
So I don't know if you still have that gear, but if you ever need one, I'm in Grafton. We live pretty close. I'll totally let you borrow mine.
Oh yeah?
Anytime you want to use it, I'll let you borrow it.
Okay, brother. All right, that's awesome. I tell you what I stumbled upon. I started using a Tech 21 little paradriver.
Yep.
They make a paradriver, and I was able to boost that frequency and kind of get a very similar thing. I used that for a number of years. Now in my pedal, it's got a pre-EQ section where I can go in with the parametric EQ and do the same thing, and I'm able to get that Stryper tone out of my pedal.
That's unbelievable. That's amazing.
Really cool.
Yeah. Well, this is a good segue into getting into the Stryper aspect of your career. Like, obviously, a lot of people have asked you a million questions, so there's not, if I'm being redundant, we could stop. But,
no, not at all. Never.
Definitely, I want to know. I mean, in my scene, heavy metal, there was a big Christian movement in the early thousands, so it was okay to be a Christian band, where it wasn't kind of prior to that.
Right.
Back when you guys were coming out, I mean, you guys, I think, were one of the first mainstream metal-ish bands that kind of made it. Did that help or hurt the Stryper thing? And was that planned ahead of time? Like, when you guys were starting the band, was that going to be the thing? Was like, did you guys do that strategically, or did that kind of happen organically?
Well, I mean, the way we always tried to set things up was we didn't think about it. We didn't sit down and have meetings like, okay, let's make sure we tag this Christian so we can do this, and we never talked about that. We were a rock band that had gone to church early on and committed our lives early on, then fell away. I became a Christian when I was 12, kind of fell away when I was 13, almost 14, started getting involved in the club scene, drank and drugged and did all that stuff from the age of 14, 15 up to 20, then rededicated my life. And that's when I rededicated the band. We wanted to rededicate the band. And we changed the lyrics, but we remained the same band that we always were in terms of our looks, our sound, our image, our tone. We just changed the message.
Yep.
But we never really wanted to be tagged a Christian band. I've never been one to really understand that. What is a Christian band? You're either a rock band or you're not.
Yep.
But a Christian rock band, I don't get it. I mean, when we look through the yellow pages, we don't look for Christian plumbers. I don't.
No.
I don't understand that.
Yeah.
You're a plumber or you're not.
Yeah.
You're not a Christian plumber. Now, if you're a Christian and you're a plumber, well, you're a Christian.
Yeah.
But a Christian plumber, I don't get it.
Yeah.
So I try to explain that with some people, and they get bent out of shape because they cling to that title so strongly. You know?
Yeah. Well, that was my question. It's like, Kiss made an early decision to be like the band with paint on their face, right? Other bands have done it before, but they wanted to go to the next level. I just didn't know if it was like you guys were sitting around one day and saying, like, we're a great band. Obviously, we're dedicated to Christianity. Should this be our thing? Should we talk about God? Should we sing about God? Should we move forward with that because no one else is doing that? And obviously that helps because, like, sometimes, like, you want to do something because no one else has done it before, right?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. And I think that would more so apply to, like, the look and the tone and the style of harmonies. Musically, for sure, we thought about, like, hey, let's do things that no one else has done. We really tried to do that. In terms of the faith, we just did it because that's what our hearts were telling us. That's what we wanted. We wanted to get out of the scene that involved drugs and alcoholism and these guys waking up in their own, pool of. I mean, we saw a lot of stuff back then, and it's like we just got burnt out on it at an early age. Thank God.
Yeah.
And we decided to go down a different path.
Well, that's what I was going to say. There's a lot of alcohol, drug abuse during that period of time. I mean, did some of you guys get swayed into that, and or were you guys very methodical about staying clean, keeping true to your image?
Well, I've got a bunch of different views on that. Back then, we were definitely hell-bent, for lack of a better term, no pun intended. We were hell-bent on, not drinking and doing away with all that stuff. But eventually we started bringing some beer to rehearsal and doing this and doing that. And then that led to a period in our lives that, I'm regretful of. And that is, a lot of drinking. Marriages started to suffer,
Mm-hmm.
A lot. We went down that road, a bad road. Nowadays, I like a good bourbon. I like to get a bottle of bourbon and have a glass of bourbon every now and then, once a week, if that. And it's funny because when I talk about that, people think, what? Oh my gosh, Michael Sweet drinks bourbon. He can't be Christian. It's so interesting how people view things. It's taken so far many times.
Yeah. Well, I was going to say, like, speaking from experience, and obviously my band was known for drinking a little bit, but I mean, half of it is we didn't really drink. And then you get to a point in your career where Maybe your business manager is messing with you. Maybe the touring aspect of it's a little bit hard. Maybe it's just
Right.
straight up boredom because you,
Yeah.
as I call it, you hurry up to wait to get to all your gigs. You're literally
Yep.
rushing through airports, you're running, doing this and that, and then you finally get there and you have 8 hours to literally sit and wait to play. So
Yeah.
alcohol becomes a part of the music business sometimes due to just boredom. And
Yeah.
I'm assuming you guys dealt with a lot of that just waiting around.
Oh, absolutely. And I mean, still to this day, it's just that it's a social thing. It's kind of nice to go and work your butt off all day and play and then get on the bus, everyone's showered and winding down and have a drink together.
Yeah.
I think the key is not letting it control you. You keep controlling it.
Yeah.
You know, some people say, well, I can't do that. Well, okay, then more power to you. If you can't do it, then don't do it.
Yeah.
But I mean, you know, I just don't like when people try to apply their own convictions on other people.
Yep.
You know,
I would agree with that. That's very
you know what I
important.
mean?
Yeah. Well, let me ask you a fun question because we don't have many questions right now. People are just agreeing with you here on our feed. So in my band, right? Sometimes like the label will come out. They'll try to feed you before the gig. You go to a nice dinner, and we always make a joke that like you don't want to look too big on stage, right? There's a lot of cameras. You don't want to eat too much, or you're going to look like.
Right.
You're just your stomach's gonna stick out and all that other stuff. Did you
Right.
guys like make a conscious effort to like you guys wore spandex, so it was very revealing. Did you guys have to like stay away from that meatball sub before the show?
Back in the day, no. Back in the 80s, no, because our metabolisms were pretty good.
Yeah.
All right. We had very active metabolisms and they would kick in and we'd burn it off. And we never really had a problem with weight back then. Now, you fast forward to 2003, we started having to watch our food intake a little bit better.
Yeah.
And then fast forward now to 2020, even more so.
Yeah.
As we get older, it's harder. We're still blessed with the fact that we don't have extreme issues.
Yeah.
In terms of our weight. No one in the band really does.
Yep.
And we're blessed in that sense, but we still try to watch what we eat and try to eat healthy and not pack on too many pounds.
Well, I'll tell you, my band was the opposite. It's like one guy would have like a sub right before the show, drink about a handle of whiskey, and then after show, obviously there's after show pizza, and he'd be dipping it in ranch. We looked terrible for about like a couple years of doing that, so I had to ask just because you guys wore so much spandex, it had to be a question.
No, for sure, man. And it's always balance in anything, right?
Yeah.
So we did all the pizzas. There were times for a whole tour where we each had our own pizza after every show.
Oh man, that's the dream. That is literally the dream.
We would eat the pizza, the whole pizza. And I'm thinking to myself, this can't be good. So I think it comes down to, a little discipline, a little self-discipline, and just having a little willpower and trying to think in line of, hey, I want to take care of myself. I don't want to die at the age of 30. I'd rather live out a full and happy life and eat a little healthier and maybe achieve that.
Yeah, it's actually funny because you can relate to this. And if you think back when you were a kid and you were struggling on the road, like there is a kid listening to this right now saying like, every guy had a pizza in the band. That's making it. so you guys officially pizza wise have made it in the industry. Like this is like, to me, that's even amazing.
Oh, dude, we did. Every guy. Now the crew, I'm not going to lie.
They shared.
Call it being selfish or mean or whatever. The band members each had their own pizza.
Yep.
The crew had, enough pizza to go around, but they shared pizza. but the band each had their own pizza, and it just became one of those things, man. And we were a little spoiled back in the day, no doubt.
My band has we are very polite. Like even though we're drinking and doing our own thing, we're very like polite and like don't like to call each other on things. But we would sometimes have like deli platters and pizza and stuff before the gig, and our techs would eat everything. And we wouldn't do anything about it. Like literally, we had one tech eat almost a whole deli platter himself, made a sandwich like that big. And we were just kind of like letting it happen because we couldn't believe he would do that.
Now, see, I'll say something in a situation like that. That's happened to me before. Like I need Lay's potato chips because of the oil and the salt. They actually kind of help my voice before showtime. And everybody knows that's a Michael Sweet writer thing.
That's awesome.
And if I come backstage and they're all gone.
Oh, that's it. You're going to see the wrong side of Michael Sweet, right?
Dude, I'll call immediately. I won't yell, but I'll say, really, guys?
Yeah. You have to.
Who ate these? Who ate these? Come on.
You have to remind everybody who the singer in the band is. Oh man. So my thing is, I love drinking, and this is so weird. I'm not trying to like look like I'm drinking a beer on stage because I don't mind drinking, but I love apple juice on stage. I don't know
Oh,
what it
nice.
is. I feel like it coats your throat, puts you in a good place. And if you want to
Yeah.
mix a little alcohol, like a little vodka in there, I call it the nature
Sure.
walk.
Yep.
It's a good drink.
Everybody's different. I've performed and traveled with singers that do the throat coat thing.
Yep.
Singers that do just the water things. Singers. I did a tour of South America with a guy that drank Coke.
Yep.
Literally a 2-liter bottle of Coke. He'd start 2 or 3 hours pre-show, and that whole thing would be gone by showtime.
That's hard. That's hard on
And
your
he
body.
swore by it. He swore that was his secret weapon.
Send him the video of Coca-Cola taking the rust off of a off of a.
I know, man. And then I hear stories like CJ. Perry told me stories about CJ with lemons. Like he would eat and get the juice from whole lemons on stage. Everybody has their own thing.
That's pretty awesome. Well, try
CJ of Firehouse, that is.
Oh yeah. And that guy obviously sings like an angel.
Absolutely.
Oh man. So yeah, I'll say try my drink, apple juice or a nature walk, a little bit of vodka, 50-50 pour. When I say a little bit of vodka, 50-50 pour, apple juice. Apple juice vodka. Try that.
50-50.
50-50 puts you in that like next tier show level kind of get drunk kind of phase. Go maybe, a quarter. Just, a couple, 2-3 shots. Get yourself, properly lubricated, as we call it. So my last question is, this is something, I was looking through your Wikipedia just because I wanted to catch up with what you're doing. But, I mean, you did Stryper for a certain period of time, and then you had a successful solo career. And then from there, you were kind of bouncing around. Was there ever a real need to, I don't want to call it break up Stryper, but like disband for a minute and then come back? Was that one of those things that you did because you just wanted to get away from it and just wanted to call it quits for a while? Or did you guys all look in the room and say, hey, we're at a certain age, I want to go do this, I want to go do that, and we'll come back later? How does that work?
Yeah, no, we were actually planning out another album.
Yep.
A follow-up to Against the Law. And we were talking about it and setting up my warehouse with the recording gear and stuff. We were going to start doing demos and whatnot. And I got to be honest with you, I was just feeling internally, I was feeling like I had to bow out. I had to leave because my marriage was taking a back seat.
Yep.
My marriage was suffering. My relationship with God was suffering. I felt like those were the priorities: God, family, and then whatever else, right?
Yep.
And the band was really taking precedence over everything else that was more important. So I felt the only way to deal with that was to leave.
Yep.
Whether it was for 6 months or 6 years or a lifetime, I had to leave. And I did. And it was a very difficult decision, one that I struggled with for months. And when I finally made that decision and I told that to the guys, I broke the news to the guys, I could tell there was heartbreak all around, including myself.
Yeah.
But it was something I had to do to save my marriage.
So when did you get to the point where you probably course corrected your marriage, right? You did the things, the personal stuff that you need to do. At what point are you saying to yourself, like, man, I miss the dudes. I gotta do this again?
Well, that was a while. That wasn't until like 2002, 2003. We got back together again and did what we call the Celebration Tour in 2003.
Yep.
I had been in contact with Oz. I stayed the most in contact with Oz. And we would kind of talk about the possibility of getting back together and whatnot. I played on my solo album, which was Reborn.
Yep.
I played that for them at a show. And that's really what, in terms of recording, that's what launched Stryper back together again, was the Reborn album. But, when I left the band and did my solo thing, I enjoyed time away.
Yep.
I enjoyed doing a different style. I enjoyed where I was at as a musician, where my family was at, where my faith was at. I enjoyed where everything was going. So I viewed it as, why would I go back to that when I have this.
Yep.
You know, and that's not to belittle Stryper or take anything away from that, but that's just how I felt. And you know, I look back on those times and I really don't regret a thing in terms of my decisions. I left, and I'm very glad that I did. And I feel if I didn't, I don't know where I'd be today.
That makes a lot of sense. I mean, when you think about it too, you aspire to be a musician your whole life. You might have started your journey at 9, 10, 13 years old or whatever it is. And then you
Yep.
play throughout your 20s and maybe even your 30s. And then you get to your 40s and you're like, at one point you say to yourself, like, I've been doing this. I mean, you make it and you say to yourself, like, oh wait, I need to step off of this for a while. Like,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
just been like on the road too much going, because your manager, booking agents, they'll keep you on the road as long as you'll say yes.
Oh yeah. For
So
sure. And they're not in your shoes. They're not out there doing the grunt work. They're on the phone at a desk, and they go home at night and have somewhat of a normal life. When you're out there traveling on the road, it's not a normal life. It's a great life. It's not a normal life.
yeah, well, that's cool that
And
you were smart enough to peel it back and say, guys, we're stopping right now.
exactly, exactly. And I just really, I did not, I refused to see my family fail. You know, we had a son and a daughter. My daughter was born in '91, so this is right about the time I started thinking about leaving the band, '91 into '92, and I left in '92. You know, and I wrote about all this stuff in my book, and I talk about the things that bad decisions that I made and things that happened, and you know, I never looked back on that and said, I wish I hadn't done that. I'm glad I did. And now Stryper's together, and I feel like we're stronger than we've ever been.
I was gonna say 92. That puts you at a place where I think that's the smartest move you could ever made. When you think about it, 92 puts you right where Nirvana and grunge took over.
Yeah,
So you literally cut off right where probably when Smells Like Teen Spirit came out, which is probably a good thing to take a break at that time.
absolutely. And there's no doubt about it. There were bands that were thriving, hair bands that were thriving. You know, you had bands like Slaughter and
Yep.
Firehouse and Steelheart, Love Hate, bands that were still emerging in the early '90s, doing very well. But you know, Stryper, it wasn't in the cards for Stryper to do that, and I think a lot of that was based on our own choices. I think we made some poor choices. I talked about that recently on Facebook. How I think the album Against the Law, it's a great album. It sounds great, produced by Tom Warman, but I think it was a mistake.
Yep.
We threw away everything that we were and tried to be something that we weren't.
Yep. That makes
And
total sense.
yeah, although it's a great album, no doubt, but it's just, you know, that was the beginning of the end in my view.
That's awesome. Yeah, no, I hear you. It makes total sense. Before I let you go, because I've kept you a little bit too long, two more fan questions. One is how is Oz's health, and two, Eric Stratton is asking any musical projects coming up outside of Stryper.
Well, I got Oz's health. First of all, is he's doing good. He's been, you know, on a strict diet and really trying to do all the things that the doctors tell him to do, and he's in a good place. At least I think he is. He seems to be very alert and with it, and pretty much normal Oz. So it's really good to see that. In terms of the projects, I've got a lot of stuff going on. I mean, I've got the new Stryper album coming out this year, September. We're wrapping up a new acoustic album live at Spirit House Studios. It's awesome,
Yep.
really cool. I'm going to start singing a project with Tracy Guns called Sunbomb.
Yep.
I start doing that very soon. Been some delays. I've been asked to produce an album with an incredible singer from the UK. I can't give his name yet, but I'm excited about that. And then there's another project I'm going to start working on with a producer from Frontiers, and then I'm going to start writing my next solo album in the next 2 to 3 months.
So to answer your question, Eric, Michael has nothing going on. He's not doing anything coming up. That's amazing. That's one like long list. It seems like you're so active. So it's inspiring to see you still active, still working with a lot of people, still collaborating. That's unbelievable. I
I'm
appreciate
telling
that.
my daughter's coming in the door, and I'm telling her to shh.
Well, hey, well,
Not you.
yeah, well, family comes first. We're gonna let you go. We're gonna end this one here. Michael, hang out after the feed. I just want to say thanks for showing up. But guys, thank you so much for watching this Fishman Live and or listening to Everything You Hear Is True Fishman podcast. We'll be back next week with another guest. Please keep your eyes peeled for the next post of who we're going to be interviewing. So, guys, I'm going to sign off here with Michael. Michael, thank you so much for being on the feed.
Thank you guys, man. Thank you.